Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to On the Brick Road again. My name's Kyle, and I'll be your host today for this fine, wonderful podcast where I drive to work and talk about Lego Star Wars. Now, today, we're going to have a pretty interesting topic, I think at least. Well, maybe you guys don't think so. I think so, at the very least. Because I want to talk about what is, in my opinion, the four very distinct types of Stormtroopers that came out in Lego, and how they kind of, loosely coordinate to a change in Lego as a whole. And of course, there have been many more than four types of Stormtroopers, of just basic Stormtroopers. But really, there's four main kinds I want to talk about. And I'll go over them, and I'll kind of explain how each of them symbolize a bit of a turning point in Lego Star Wars. And just kind of go over how you can kind of use them as markers. And then, of course, I will mention my opinion on Lego Stormtroopers and how I feel about them. So, where to begin? Well, it's always best to start at the middle, of course. I'm kidding. That is a reference to, I believe it was a movie. Don't worry about it. Let's start at the beginning, all right? Let's be smart about this. You see, when Lego was first dipping their little toes into Star Wars, they were still experimenting. And since they were the first Stormtroopers that came out, looked a bit wonky, I would say. And the real reason for this is, if you look at some of the earliest Stormtroopers, they might have a yellow head underneath their helmet, which is weird. They had very tiny little, I guess you would call them the parts of the mouth, almost, that's the best way I can describe it. The mouth on the helmet was extremely small and bent, and that was kind of weird, again, very early on. And so these are very weird features. Not to mention, you could see that they would be holding the classic blasters that have the megaphone with a little translucent stud on it. So these are your early Stormtroopers. There weren't too many of them from what I can remember. So it wasn't like they were made a whole bunch, but they did exist. They were very early on. They were kind of rough, and there was some variation. There was a set that had Emperor Palpatine on his Imperial shuttle, landing, and it was supposed to have him landing in the Death Star, and it came with two Imperial officers. And this is after they had already switched to flesh tone, but they had just switched to flesh tone for the minifigures, so it was still kind of rough. And the Stormtroopers were still looking kind of rough. They still had the OG blaster. They still had kind of wonky, lighter printing. It wasn't exactly confirmed and defined. And they also had leg printing on these Stormtroopers for some reason, which is so random. And so that was kind of a weird addition. So Lego was definitely experimenting some. And of course, the helmet did eventually change to not have the super tiny mouth mark. They gave it a more proper looking mouth mark that was longer, not as bent. But yeah, so this was an early stage though. This is the start of Lego Star Wars. So you can't really assume that they're going to get things perfect and looking fantastic straight off the bat. But anyway, so this is the first wave, and then we get the second wave of Stormtroopers. And also note that there was variation in this first wave, because there's variation in every wave, but there's a general consensus of how they look. Which this first wave is wonky. But the second wave is when they really start to put the old nail in the coffin, if you were willing to say that. Essentially, Lego was using the same helmet mold. Their printing was pretty much the same. It was just maybe a bit darker, a bit more crisp. The helmet now had been updated, so it didn't have the tiny little mouthpiece, as I was saying. It had a much longer one. It had some stripes in it now, looking very good. The minifigure heads were all like black heads now, so you didn't have to worry about that. There was no leg printing, but that was like standard. It was kind of decided. It wasn't like flip-flopping back and forth, like, oh, leg printing, no leg printing. There's just no leg printing. The blasters were updated as well, so you had the more modern type of blasters that are in the three groups, the pistol, carbine, and rifle, that we still know and love today. And so, overall, everything was looking pretty good. And these guys stayed around so long. Like, oh my gosh. They would not die. And they're probably most famous. I mean, they've been in many sets. But the most famous set I can think of that they're from is the OG Imperial dropship. Like, that's what they have to be most well known for, because you got 3 of those suckers in there. Yeah, and I guess I should mention for the first wave of Stormtroopers, the most famous sets I can think of are, again, that one ship, Palpatine's like landing shuttle and the Death Star. It came with like many figures, actually. It's a pretty cool set. I wish they would remake it, honestly. There's like 4 Stormtroopers with leg printing in there. And then also there was the set that is supposed to represent Luke being like captured on Endor, and it came with Luke like a little walkway build, an Imperial officer, and then one Stormtrooper. And so that Stormtrooper game was kind of the older model from, if I'm remembering correctly. But yeah, so this second wave really had defined the Stormtrooper. It was set in stone. They all looked the same pretty much, and it was just in general a pretty good like upgrade, I would say, just because of the consistency, and everything was a bit crisper, a bit more defined, and of course the new blasters very much helped. And you know, this kind of transition from LEGO making these wonky Stormtroopers that kind of vary and, you know, they aren't really well defined just yet, that really reminds me of just early LEGO in general, back in the days of the yellow skin tones. And then they slowly got more defined, right? And that's this, as LEGO got more defined, the Stormtroopers got more defined and more consistent at that. And these Stormtroopers in the second wave, so many of them were made, and I feel like LEGO was in this kind of phase for so long where they had figured out what to do and they just stuck with it. They weren't really increasing, they weren't improving anymore. They were quite content where they were at. And you know, I mean, I suppose that's okay. But hey, it was a good Stormtrooper. I can't even complain, really. But of course, things would change. And so as we see, this second wave of Stormtrooper in the last leg of its life had some variation take place. One of the big variations that I saw was on the escape pod on Tatooine set. I'm blanking on the official name, but essentially it had R2-D2 and C-3PO in the escape pod from the Tantive 4, and came with 2 sand troopers and a little speeder bike. I absolutely loved that set when I was younger. It was one of my favorites. But these sand troopers had leg printing, which was something that the Stormtroopers had not had. So LEGO was kind of branching out a little bit. They were testing the waters, you could say. So they were kind of seeing like, oh yeah, well, we're kind of adding more detail to these guys, and we're just kind of seeing where that goes. So this was very much new and very shocking. And another thing, these guys also had almost all black heads, except they had like a little face. So it looked like a face with like a black kind of like hood over it almost. So if you wanted to, you could take the helmet off your Stormtrooper and you could see a little dude's face. And so this was another thing they were kind of testing. It looked like, you know, like, hey, mostly black helmets, or heads, but we'll add a bit of a face just for that added play feature of if you want to take the helmet off and have the guy kind of sitting here. But also it still looks pretty good because if you looked at the neck piece of the Stormtrooper with the helmet on, it still looked black. I thought that was a really good compromise. I thought it added a play feature, and it showed that LEGO was putting a bit more effort into their minifigures. Another thing is, they changed the printing on the chest plate of the Stormtroopers. And what I really noticed when I was looking through a Lego catalog, is the Ewok Village set comes with 2 Stormtroopers, no leg printing, the second wave helmet and helmet print, but they have a new chest print or torso print, and this new torso print would actually be the one that's used for the Wave 3 Stormtroopers. So you can see LEGO towards the end of the life of the Wave 2 ones was really kind of testing the waters. And I think, again, during this time period, you can see LEGO was testing the waters more of adding more leg printing and getting newer, updated prints and molds even. Now, the Stormtrooper helmet mold would not change for Wave 3, but it was still a big change for the Stormtrooper, because the Wave 3 Stormtrooper came with new helmet prints, it came with a new torso print, and it had leg printing now, and that was like standard. So these were much more detailed, and just in general looked fantastic. It's in my humble opinion that these are by far the best Stormtroopers that LEGO has ever made. I think these look fantastic. The helmet mold is great. They didn't really need to change it. The new prints were very crisp and solid. Looked fantastic. The new helmet print was wonderful. Way more detail. They switched back to going to just the black heads on these guys, which was kind of weird. They didn't continue with the heads that had like a face, but then black all around it, like a hood almost. But that was no big deal. And then of course they're still using the standard LEGO guns. But in general, fantastic update. These Stormtroopers are known as the Rogue One Stormtroopers. I see a lot of people saying that just because they are very much associated with the Rogue One sets that came out, because they were included in that. But they actually came out slightly more before then, if I'm correct. I think the first time I saw them was in the Star Destroyer. I believe it was the 2015 Star Destroyer, 2016, somewhere around then. I believe that's the first time I saw them though. And with these new Stormtroopers, we quickly got the new Imperial officers, and the new helmets had come just before for the Naval Troopers, and Darth Vader's new helmet would come soon after this. And printings were all updated for these guys; it became much more crisp. You would also see, I believe, around the time that this new Stormtrooper was coming out, you had the new Phase 2 clones were coming out, 2014, 2015, right? So, again, a very big change to make much more detailed and interesting, in-depth minifigures, where they were doing updated prints that were much crisper, looked much better. They were doing more leg printing. And they had some new molds coming out, not for this Stormtrooper, but in general for the time. So this was such a monumental, turning point for LEGO, where they were really just increasing a lot of their quality. And it was just fantastic. And these minifigures were, again, great. Probably most well-known for coming in that Rogue One Imperial Battle Pack. They came with 2 Death Troopers and 2 Stormtroopers. Those 2 Stormtroopers, of course, being the Wave 3 Stormtroopers. And, excuse me. Sorry about that. I don't think I've coughed in a video before. Weird. Well, you know. Anyways, minor little, oh, look at that moment beside. I can't gush enough over these guys. I absolutely loved them. I think they're just the best. But then, dun-dun, we entered the 4th wave. And I say we entered the 4th wave, we are entering the 4th wave. The 4th wave has just started. And so it's hard to say too much about it, but it's definitely a change. And I think most people point to this change when they look at the new Stormtrooper helmet. Oh gosh, they're rough. They're rough. The Family Guy Stormtrooper helmet. And this helmet alone did not enter the 4th wave, but this was more like a transition, because they were using the same leg prints and the same torso prints, but they had this new helmet mold that looked so bad. Oh gosh, it's so bad. I don't know why LEGO is sticking with this. Like, they made a new helmet mold for Rebel pilots, and then they just stopped using it after only using it in one set. Which I guess part of the reason is because that helmet mold wasn't fitting in a lot of ship designs. But, like, people didn't like that, and they got rid of it. I actually thought that was okay. I could live with it. I wasn't in love with it, but I could live with it. But then they make this absolutely atrocious mold for the Stormtrooper, and they're, like, dead set on using it. I have heard of no one that has said, oh, yeah, I like that mold. No one I've met has ever liked the mold. They all either hate it or they just like, yeah, I don't like it, but I'll live with it, I guess. But anyway, so that's weird. That's a side rant, getting distracted. But anyways, it's interesting, really, that, to think about this change, because the helmet alone wasn't the change, because we also had a new print that just came out pretty recently. And this new print for the torso and the legs, that signaled the full switch, because now there's a new helmet, a new torso print, and new leg prints, and that's the standard Stormtrooper. And the first Stormtrooper like this that came out was, I believe, in the Stormtrooper mech, with two more quickly coming out in the Tantive 4 boarding. And so this is really interesting to see that this is the Wave 4 Stormtrooper, and we're probably going to have them around for a couple years. Like, all the other Stormtrooper variants were around for a few years, so we're probably going to be stuck with this guy. And the new prints on these Wave 4 Stormtroopers, they're not the worst thing in the world, but I don't think they're as good as the Wave 3 Stormtrooper prints. And you know what? I would go as far to say I don't like the white hips, because that's another big change. Wave 1, 2, and 3, their Stormtroopers all had black hips. That was very standard. Very briefly, they experimented with Stormtroopers with white hips in Wave 1, but they quickly went back to black, and it stuck with black. But in the case of Wave 4, white hips is like the standard for these Stormtroopers now, and I don't think that looks nearly as good as the black hips. I think it's too much white, and I think Stormtroopers do have a decent amount of black on them for where their armor pieces aren't like fully connected. Anyways, but this is Wave 4, and this is kind of bringing in this new era of LEGO Star Wars that we're kind of currently entering, where, again, they are updating a few things. They are changing some prints. They're adding some more detail. I feel like even if the LEGO minifigures that LEGO is making currently aren't your favorite, or you don't love all of them, or there's some flaws in them, I don't think you can deny that there have been some upgrades. Their arm printing is becoming way more standard now in this era, I would say. They have gotten rid of waist capes, but they're adding some pauldrons. Pauldrons are still around, even some new pauldrons. They have made a new Clone Trooper helmet mold, the one with the holes. Even if you don't like it, this is new. And they're adding, the new visor piece, the binocular visor piece. So LEGO is updating and kind of going through a change right now. And I think there's more changes to come still, but LEGO is in the middle of one right now. And so, yeah, it's interesting. And so in total, we have these 4 waves, and I think each wave kind of does have something to offer. Wave 1, the OG wave, or the test wave, does have some unique variations on Stormtroopers, things that are kind of wild to see. Maybe even some of them too advanced for their time, you would say. But it is pretty unique to see it. It's pretty cool. I mean, I like the OG wave just for the sake that it's how LEGO got its footing. Then you have the classic wave, I would say, Wave 2, and you have these, just so many of these guys were made. They were in so many sets. Like, I know personally, I grew up on that wave, really, and so I just have dozens of those suckers, just because they came in everything, and there's such just good upgrades and consistency. And then we have the third wave, the Rogue One wave, which is by far my favorite. I just think the detail was amazing. It looked crisp. It looked new. And this is really the wave that looks so crisp and new that it stood out. It really did. Like, Wave 1 and Wave 2, you could kind of mix together, like if you had a whole bunch of them sitting in a group, and it would be fine. You could not do that. You could not do that for Wave 3. Wave 3 was on its own plane. It could not mix. So I found that really interesting, honestly, to see this kind of change. And oh my gosh, there's like a huge accident that just happened up here. This is, oh my gosh. Wow. See, distracted. Sorry, everyone looks like they're okay, but like the accident just happened. Like there's like smoke coming off the vehicles. Everyone's walking around though. So thank God they're okay. It wasn't like a, accident that it appears that no one was injured. Oh my gosh, there is a car that slipped over. Oh my gosh, and this person is trying to get around me, so I guess I'll let them. Oh man, this is only a slight hassle. I don't know what. Oh, this person's going to get out. Okay, I think everyone's okay though. I mean, there is a flipped over car. This looks absolutely wild, but everyone's walking around. Everyone appears to be. I'm blocking traffic now. I'm stuck in the intersection. I'm sorry, people. I know this is bad. Podcast. I'm doing podcast things. Oh wow, it is. Don't mind me just doing podcast things. Oh man, this true. Oh wow, there's just stuff all over the road. Oh my goodness, great. This is crazy. Wow, bad accident. Flipped over car. Oh man, thank God everyone's walking around there. Everyone looks okay, so that's good. You know what? Yeah, the podcast be done. I was rambling about something. I'll cut this out in post maybe. I never do post editing. Maybe I'll do post editing. You know what? I'm gonna. Please. Everyone's good. Okay. All right. Okay. I feel good about that. I feel all right. Where was I? Post editing. Dun dun dun. Okay. All right. I'm coughing. There's an ambulance. There's an accident. Oh gosh, is the ambulance coming from here? Because I'm stuck in the intersection again. I don't want to block. Oh my gosh, there's a lot going on right now. I'm just trying to do a podcast. What? Oh man. Lego. I was talking about Legos. Yeah, Wave 3, the Rogue One Stormtroopers. They stand out. They look good. We like them. They cannot blend with Wave 1 and Wave 2. Now, the transition period you had between Wave 3 and Wave 4, where they had the same prints but different helmets, they could kind of blend in with Wave 3. Now, the newest Wave 4 though, their printing and their helmets are all different from Wave 3. So you can kind of blend them, but not really. They kind of stand out, I would say. And it's just so shocking to see the Wave 4, because I'm so used to I was so used to Wave 2 for so long, and then I finally got used to Wave 3. And now I'm like, what the freak is this Wave 4? This is a terrible thing. And I would like to mention, when Lego transitioned from Wave 2 to 3, even though I grew up on Wave 2, I never looked at Wave 3 and thought to myself, wow, oh my goodness gravy. Well, that is 2 fire trucks and 2 cop cars coming, and I mean, I guess they're going to this accident. Everyone looked okay. I really hope. I'm concerned now because, like, everyone was, like, walking around and talking, and, like, dude, there was a dude on a cell phone. Like, everyone was moving, though. And oh my gosh. Anyways, there's a lot going on. Maybe it wasn't meant to be that I talk about the Lego Stormtroopers today. This is part of the excitement. This is part of the show when you do a podcast while driving. Anyways, yeah. All this to say, every wave has something to offer. They're all cool in their own way, I guess. They all have something. Personally, I think Wave 3 is the best. I really don't think I'm biased on that, though. I think I really am being pretty objective. And yeah, I don't know. I would be curious to see what everyone else thinks. Oh my gosh, there's another cop car, and is that another fire truck? Oh, it's like a fire SUV. Oh my god, is there no ambulance coming though? I mean, it was right in front of a hospital that this accident happened. How is there not an ambulance coming here before this madness? Alright, you know what? Podcast done. We're finished. It's been real. It's been fun. I got out my spiel. Tell me what Lego Stormtrooper you think is the best. Oh, wait, never mind. There's one other Stormtrooper type that I didn't talk about because it's special. Because the Rebels Stormtrooper type is very unique on the helmet printing and the torso and leg printing because it's trying to mimic a Stormtrooper specifically from this animated TV show. And because it was animated, the Stormtroopers looked wonky. And that's weird. So I didn't include it. I don't think they look the best, but they're not terrible. I'm going to be honest. I bought a whole bunch of Wave 3 Stormtroopers, the ones that have jetpacks on and they're kind of scuffed up. I took the jetpacks off and just set them down like they're normal Stormtroopers, and I gave all the jetpacks to my Rebel Stormtrooper guys, and I said, oh yeah, they're just jetpack troopers. That's why they have different armor. And now they just kind of chill with jetpacks, and they're my jetpack troopers. And that's a modification I did, I guess you could say, but it was better than just throwing all my Rebel Stormtroopers into a drawer and being like, I guess I'll never use them again, because they don't fit in with the rest of my Stormtroopers. Oh no. Anyways, that's it. That's done. Podcast over. It's been real. It's been fun. I hope you enjoyed. Please be safe out there on the road. And you've been listening to On the Brick Road again, baby. It's been real. It's been fun. I'm your host, Kyle. Please give a like if you enjoyed, or I don't know, maybe you didn't enjoy. You know what? Tell me why you didn't enjoy. Criticize me. Was it because I was driving in a car? You can be honest and tell me it's because I'm driving in a car. That's not going to change, though. The podcast will always be in a car. Anyways, it's been real. It's been fun. Peace.